Welcome to The First Turn. I'm your host, Hyena, and today Llama and I are talking more about Warhammer 40k 10th edition, this time about the weekly faction previews and how index rules are going to compare to codex rules. We talk about the expansion of the Age of Sigmar lore through Hammer and Bolter and Black Talon on Warhammer Plus, and we talk about a new brush set from Avanti Art, who's working with Scale 75 to provide quality brushes stateside, and more. Enjoy. So another week of 10th. I mean, it looks like they're doing every weekday a new army preview.
Yeah.
With the 20 or 24 total factions in the game.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like about a month worth of previews before we get to all of them. Assuming they're going to do every single one of them.
Right.
A war scroll reveal, or a data sheet reveal, a weapon reveal, and an army rule reveal. Is basically what they're doing for every starter army in 10th.
And we are also starting with this foamy, frothy punch thing that you made.
Yeah. There's a local distillery. Made a really nice, fragrant peach vodka. We're mixing it in with some Simply, not sponsored, fruit punch. And I crushed ice and really hits the spot. Really nice, refreshing.
Yeah, we're in like the 80s right now, even though it's late in the evening.
Yeah.
And so, it's hitting the spot. So, anyone listening, get some peach vodka, some fruit punch and ice, mix it up, drink along.
Pretty great. So what we're seeing in the mix here is just a ton of the main armies. Right?
Yep.
Well, your vanilla armies for the game, right? Your Tyranids we haven't seen much of besides like the starter box. Right?
Starter box stuff.
We got. I guess we did get a reveal for their army.
They showed us Shadow in the Warp,
that's right.
which is very different than what it used to be.
Okay, so they are covered. So it's kind of like the outlier armies that need to get previewed. Obviously different chapters if they have any kind of special rules on their own.
Do you think this will be the instance we get Eldari Craft World and get the big disappointing reveal that people spoke about?
Yeah. No, I think Eldari can be fine.
I think most of these armies look fine so far.
I thought it was interesting that they are kind of following through with I don't know if I want to call it like a stat flattening, or I don't know what I want to call it, but I mean, we've definitely seen that everything is not threes anymore.
Yeah.
Right? Like, the armies that are not Space Marines apparently hit way worse on, like, fours generally, or even some of the Votan guys we saw. They were hitting on fives with their heavy guns, assuming you would stand still for the +1 to hit.
Yeah.
To hit on fours again. I think that's very interesting. Yeah, I think it's very interesting that they're doing heavy the opposite way that they normally do. Normally, you have a ballistic skill on your unit, and then you get a -1 to hit if you move. Well, in this case, they've baked in the number to reach is worse, but then you can get benefits to make
bracing yourself and
so they've kind of done it a little different, the other way around this time, which I appreciate because the nuances of plus and minus to hit tend to work a little bit better when you've got a worse target number.
Yep.
When you're hitting on a 5, you've got some wiggle room. When you're hitting on a 3, not much wiggle room.
Nope.
+1 is all you need. So stacking that doesn't make any sense. I mean, the last edition of the game they capped it anyway at +1 -1 cumulative.
Yep.
Is the best you can do, or worst you can do rather. But this, I haven't seen that rule yet, so I'm wondering if maybe there are some things that can stack to make it even better. I mean, I know we saw with Imperial Guard, Ashtron Alterum, that their order is worded different from heavy weapons standing still.
Yep.
Special rule. So heavy weapons say if you remain stationary in your movement phase when you fire this weapon, add +1 to the hit roll. The order that normally gave you +1, in previous editions, now says improve the ballistic skill of the weapon by 1, which means you're changing that target number. You're changing that 4 up to a 3 up, and then you're still able to add a +1 to it as well.
Right.
So it's those.
I'm sure there will be
effects
stacks like that. Yeah.
And so I hope they keep that consistent. When they do want things to stack, one thing changes a characteristic, the other one changes the roll.
Yeah.
So that, if you don't want things stacking, then, keep them being the same kind of simultaneous effects. But if you do want them to be able to stack, word them differently, make them do different things.
The only thing I shouldn't use the word worry because, it's just a game, but is if it will reach a point in 10th where it just starts to get to where every army can find a way to get to that 3 or 2 or whatever with stuff like that. Which kind of like that sort of thing being prevalent before is what all but nullified Space Marines from most forms of organized play because then there was nothing special about them unless some huge FAQ came along that randomly made Dark Angels super good like they did.
Right.
Because it was every army hits as well as they do, fights as well as they do, but you can get a lot more of them.
Mm-hmm. Either get a lot more or get a lot more out of the ones you have.
Yeah.
Because, look at the Votann Berserker guys. They were 4 to 7 swings per guy.
Yep.
When an Assault Marine is getting 1 base attack, +1 if he charged, +1 for his chainsword.
Yep.
Up to 3 attacks total, whereas, the Votann power weapon wielding axes and hammers and stuff were getting, double that.
Yeah.
So that kind of thing is what we're talking about. Is Gene Stealer's getting 4 or 5 swings base. Even, Chaos Marines, I guess they were pretty down there, too. Before their recent update, they were okay. They were middling number of attacks. But, look at Khorne Berserkers for World Eaters. They're base 5 on their weapon profile. No Marine has 5 attacks.
Yeah.
And most character Marines don't even have 5 attacks.
And we'll see tomorrow what World Eaters kind of look like. Because what we've noticed is they haven't been leaking out much more of the core rules of the game.
Mm-hmm.
They've just been giving us these teaser slices of each faction.
But it gives us, it does kind of help piece together how the core rules are going to work, though. Because we can extrapolate all kinds of things. With them flattening mechanics like criticals.
Yep.
Critical hit, critical wound, and different things having different triggers. Now it's you choose which critical effect you have. You don't need to specify, well, if you have simultaneous effects that do this and this, you have to choose one. It's why do I have to choose one? That how AOS does. 40K, I don't think I had to choose before. But I wonder if they're going to cut down on multiple critical effects on the same roll. So you're not getting an automatic wound through plus generating another hit that then you roll the wound for. That kind of, you could do that, those kind of shenanigans. But they've specified which of the rolls it applies to. If it says critical wound or sustained hits, means if you roll a critical hit, you get this many extra hits. Or you turn into that many hits instead, kind of thing.
Yep.
Whereas, a devastating wound is different than a devastating hit. Or lethal hit, whatever. And so, they've already started doing that with the keywords just in the rules themselves, so you know what's what. But then we even saw things like the Space Marine Captain War Scroll that was on the Boarding Patrol article showed some weapon profiles that we hadn't seen before. Things like combi weapons, right? Combi weapons before you could choose your combi weapon, alternate, underslung variety of special weapon, plus you've got a bolter still. Well, most combi weapons now will say, one profile with devastating wounds or whatever, some kind of critical effect, but it's not specifying whether it's a Melta or a Plasma or a Flamer or a Volkite or whatever extra weapon you have attached to your gun. They all just kind of were combi weapon. So that was a little weird. They also showed off the difference between a Power Fist and a Storm Shield or a Thunderhammer, which was interesting.
They'd started to differ before a bit.
They did. The Thunderhammer is nowhere near as good as it was before, but I'm hoping it's because it'll be more affordable points-wise.
Yeah.
Right? It was worse to hit. It was slightly better AP than a Power Fist, but still strength times 2. And so it's okay, there's some subtle differences there. I hope they keep all power weapons just power weapons. I'm okay with them doing that, so that you have swords and axes and mauls and
glaives and whatever.
All it is just the same profile. They did specify that a claw is different, because you can usually take claws in pairs. It looked like they're the same profile, 5, 2, 1. Strength 5 minus 2, 1 damage. But when you have double lightning claws, you were twin linked, so you would reroll wounds. That's how they're getting around, needing a special rule for lightning claws, saying you reroll your wounds because of shred or whatever. Now it's these are twin linked weapons. If you have 1 claw, it'll just basically just be a power weapon.
Yep.
Just okay, cool. Now I can model my models however I want to without worrying if it's well, did I choose the most optimal weapon for every situation?
Right, because all 5 of these do the same.
Right. So I was excited about that, and then Storm Shields. We saw the Relic Shield, which I'm assuming would be including Storm Shield to do the same thing, and Combat Shields. Just gave the character +1 wound, so it was a captain with slightly tougher.
Yeah, because you were pointing out once you have guys that are on 3s and 2s or whatever for their saves, there's it's never been a good thing when you can find a way to improve that,
right.
Or when their invuln goes from a 4 down to a 3, then they become 2 survivable.
And they also show that they don't want saves to get out of control either. Because look at the ruling for cover. If you already have a 3-up save, you don't get to improve your save and save on a 2.
Against AP 0.
You can negate some AP from other weapons, but if it's an AP 0 weapon, you don't get better armor.
Right, because that was always an abusive cover before, where it was just like, well, I'll just go in here so my guys are all on 2s all the time.
Right.
Now they're like, nope.
Yeah, I feel like they could have gone further with that and just said, I don't know, if you are claiming cover, you worsen the AP of weapons targeting you by 1. Just flat, not worry about adding bonuses to cover saves, even if you have a bad save. You know what I mean?
Could have been also they also could have maybe made it simpler, like add 1 to your save to a maximum of 3 or to the lowest of 3.
Sure.
Instead of saying unless you're armor 3 going against AP 0, all of that's just. But I think the big thing is they really just didn't want you getting super saves against what appears to be the average gun AP,
right.
Which would make those guns useless at killing armored infantry.
But there are plenty of 2-up saves we've seen already in the game. A lot of vehicles are on 2-up saves that they didn't have that before. Terminator's on a 2-up save now. Makes me wonder if you take an assault Terminator squad now and they've got a Storm Shield and a Thunderhammer or a Power Fist, whatever, do they become 4-wound infantry? If that's how a Storm Shield works, because if they don't want cover improving your saves beyond a 3, I sure as shit wouldn't think they'd want a Storm Shield giving a 3-up invuln over the top of their 4-up that they already have.
Well, that's just it.
Or adding +1 to their save on top of a 2-up. I don't think they want that kind of thing.
Yeah, I don't think they want the Storm Shield. Because, Terminators kind of had 3 saves before, and the Storm Shield always just made one of them better.
Right.
And this I think, if it just, gives you an extra wound, that's showing that you're tougher, that the shield basically eats a bullet, that's okay. It's certainly different. It's certainly showing that they're willing to try something different when rules get stale or are always abused, or just weren't used.
Yep.
I was speculating, and I could be wrong, that most of what we're seeing now, based on just some of the ways they worded things on the Warhammer community site, was that these are our index armies, is what we're seeing.
Mm-hmm. But I don't know what that means.
Yeah, and I don't know if these are codex, or what the codexes are going to look like. Mm-hmm. If the codexes look like anything other than unique detachments, or whatever. It reminded me of, in the last edition, when Tyranids were getting their release, they went a long time without their codex, and so GW kept trying to bump out rules for them. One of them was a huge mistake. The White Dwarf article for the Monster Army was a bad idea. But then they did one that released the synaptic nodes, like a new way to do synapse. Mm-hmm. And it was super unique and super cool, and it on its own gave Tyranids a functionality they didn't have. And we saw that forwarded to their codex when it came out. Right. Almost word for word, it came exactly the same, and the codex looked like...
We even speculated that in the White Dwarf itself, because those pages that they were printed on looked different than the other White Dwarf pages, these were literally the edited, mock-ups of the codex pages that they just printed in there instead of even attempting to change anything.
And I think that's what we got. And so I think there's some of the stuff they're showing us for these indexes, because everybody's getting their index day 1, so they're okay showing us this stuff. I think some of this stuff will be forwarded to their codex, and maybe most of what we're going to get now is just vanilla-ish, and then they'll have more robust stuff in whatever their army books look like.
But again, I don't know what that means, right? Because the synapse, the shadow, and the warp and stuff like that isn't limited to a specific detachment of Tyranids.
Nope.
Right?
That might carry forward.
That'll be Tyranids' rules.
Yeah.
No matter what detachment of Tyranids you bring, this is the rule you get. Same thing with Miracle Dice.
Yep.
Same thing with whatever combat drugs or power from pain that Drukhari will get inevitably. Runes of Battle for Eldar, whatever. That'll probably be their army rules.
So what was the Votann one?
Was the Grudges.
Yeah.
So one grudge is plus 1 to hit.
Judgments or whatever they called them,
It
right?
was judgment.
Whatever the leader does.
I remember they showed off what the grudges was. You get multiple grudges in the
Gotcha.
unit.
Yeah.
The first grudge you get is a plus 1 to hit. The second grudge you get is plus 1 to hit and plus 1 to wound.
Gotcha. That's
So, like,
pretty good.
That's pretty good. Plus
But-
1 to wound seems like it'd be a very powerful mechanic still in this edition.
Oh, yeah.
Because so many things are so much tougher that getting flat plus 1 to wound is the equivalent of getting like
Yeah, and
5 or 6 strength on your weapon sometimes.
And while we may not know what the chart looks like of strength versus toughness, or maybe they're going to do something involving weapon type versus unit type.
Could be.
But yeah, let's say you're firing at that tough 12 thing,
Yeah.
and you need a 5, and all of a sudden you get that second grudge. It's like 50-50. That's pretty good.
That's a lot better if you're firing a strength, 6 gun or
Yeah.
7 gun, whatever. All of a sudden, it's equivalent of having a plus 5 strength on your weapon.
Yeah,
Or hell, even if you're only wounding on 6s, going up to 5s on a weapon.
gives you a shot.
That's a big difference.
Yeah, and the other reason I think these are index rules we're getting is because they're going to show us rules for armies that, on a release schedule, don't have a codex coming for who knows how long. And so they want to get everyone, I think, out to a baseline, but still give them flavor. Because if you remember the 8th edition indexes, those were legit boring.
Yeah,
I mean,
there were no rules.
No,
there were no army rules at all.
you were just black and
literally
white.
Just got your data sheets.
Yeah.
Play with these data sheets. There you
Yeah, and most units didn't even have, like, special anything.
Right.
So, yeah, this is much more flavorful. They're giving everyone something to start with that looks fun.
Mm-hmm.
I know I'm excited, and I know that's what we've talked about a lot the last few weeks, but how can you not?
Right. It's a slow roll of new information and the inevitable release of what appears to be, on the surface, a much smarter version of the game.
Yeah.
Like they put a lot more thought into it and made a lot better design choices in learning things from the last 3 years of 9th edition. Like
That's what I was just going to say, because 8th was a hard reset on the core game, but it felt like 9th they just did nothing but experiment.
Mm-hmm.
And now maybe we're getting like a polished,
right.
hopefully.
Yeah, so I'm excited. I'm really pumped about it, actually.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to play early this edition.
Yep.
I think we're going to try to set up some events to play a few weekends when the game first comes out. Just get people in and get people trying it.
I might even play. The joke, of course, is that I never play games, but like...
I had all of my Space Marines, which I'm going to try playing Space Marines, in a box from when I moved. It's going on a year now.
Mm-hmm.
They were still in a box. I just never unpacked them. Because, Space Marines weren't worth unpacking.
Nope.
They weren't worth setting back.
They had a
up on
long
shelf
time
somewhere.
not being good.
But I had lost them. I didn't know where they were, so I tore my...
I'm sorry, how did they die?
Well,
We lost them.
Entwise?
Yeah.
Jeez. No, I had misplaced them. There you go. And I hadn't noticed until now when I started looking for them. I was like, wait a minute, I don't see them. So I tore everything apart and I eventually found them. But it was 50 or so assembled Space Marines in a box that were just MIA. But I have them
Mostly
all,
Phobos?
Yeah. Mostly assault. But they were mostly close combat Marines. So it was all my assault intercessors. It was my Blade Guard veterans. It was my a lot of my biker units, and then all of my Reaver type Phobos. Yeah,
Nice.
I
hope Reavers get a chance.
I don't think they will.
They'll still
Well,
miss.
just because we've seen what it looks like for a unit that has a close combat weapon, right? Like they're not specifying fists and kicks anymore.
Okay.
And they're not saying the core rules, if you don't have a close combat weapon, just use your model's strength characteristic, because the model doesn't have a strength characteristic anymore, right? Because before, if you didn't have a weapon, your attack was 1 damage, no AP, the strength of your model, and the attacks characteristic of your model. That's how you determined what your melee attacks were.
Sure.
Well, now every unit now has a profile for close combat on their sheet.
Yeah.
Even if they don't have a weapon, they have a profile.
Do you think Tau Suits will get fists again?
Well, it'll be something like that. Punches and kicks, maybe it'll say that. But it'll be the same. It'll be 2 attacks, strength 5, AP 0, 1 damage.
Yeah.
Hitting on 5s. Like, that's what it'll show. But...
Is that similar to what other games do typically?
I mean, it's similar. Like, look at AOS. They specify that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right? Like, when a unit of archers fights in close combat, there's no stats to figure out what they attack on. It'll say, your bow staff, or like,
Just has a 2-hit, a 2
right,
wound, and a
right. But it'll say like smacking him with your bow, 1 attack, 4s and 5s,
0-1,
0-1 kind of thing, or -1. So yeah, I think they're going to specify everything. But we've already seen what close combat weapons are. It's just the basic profile, and it's super weak. Well, Reavers only have knives. So I'm worried that they're going to just be close combat weapons, and they'll just be like 2 attacks, 4-0-1. Like nothing special at all.
I don't know, because I feel like they want to make that unit be the rogue, the assassin-y, but not an assassin. So maybe I don't know. What they need to stop doing is putting all the stats into their damn pistol, because they kept doing that. It was like, let's make the pistol have loads of AP on this unit that cost way too many points. So you're going to infiltrate this unit close to fire pistols at 9, and I hope they mix them a bit. Like, make them versatile. Make them these close range, close quarters, sneaky. I mean, they could even look at what they did with, like, the Gene Stealers.
Yeah.
Gene Stealers just don't have a shooting attack, but, like, you knock maybe 1 attack off that, give them their pistol, and then, like, make them similar.
I could even see it being, like, they get some kind of bonus on the charge.
Yep.
Because they're, like, ambushing. They're like, striking at you quickly to, like, knife you.
Yep.
So they get some kind of bonus in that first turn that they charge, or that first combat that they charge in.
Or maybe even get some sort of strike first type ability, like they snuck up on them.
I mean, that's what charging was.
It's true.
It's just you fight first.
Do you think that'll still be universal?
I hope not. I think it was a bad mechanic for the game, because everything you did would ride on charging.
Your whole melee was
There's Alpha Strike, and you all charge simultaneously. You're all safe. You all get to fight first before the enemy does. You don't need to worry about choosing which order anything fights.
Whereas in AOS, you don't get to do that.
It's a big deal. Yeah. When like you all charge in, it's like, well, if I fight over here,
one gets to go first.
I can lose guys over here before I get to actually fight. It just furthers in AOS or in 40k. It furthers the I go my whole turn version of the game.
Yep.
Right. It furthers that. I'll shoot with everything I'm equipped with. Then I'll charge with all my units, and they all get to fight before you. It's still like it's a very much like I go with my entire army before you get to do it.
Yeah.
So even close combat armies got to do that.
Yeah.
But I think the way they're making close combat units seem much more lethal in just the number of attacks that they get, or just the
I think overall those stats have looked bigger than the shooting ones.
I agree.
I mean, short of like some of the enormous guns, but
the Doomsday Cannon and the Volcano Cannon, like, they were already ridiculous.
Yep,
before.
and they're meant to hit specific targets.
So it's like,
I
don't care about those. Bolters and heavy bolters and like autocannons. That's what I'm more interested in seeing with the guns you're gonna have more than one of in an army.
Mainline guns.
What they're gonna do. But just the number of attacks that dedicated close combat units are getting now is good. We even see it in some of the stats from just normal line infantry we've seen. If you are equipped with a gun and no close combat weapon, you get like 1 attack in close combat. Because you've got a heavy weapon. You get 1 swing. But if you're a unit that's dedicated with a close combat weapon, you go from 1 attack up to like 3 or 4.
Mm-hmm.
We saw that with guys with chainswords. You're a Marine without a chainsword, 1 attack. You're a Marine with a chainsword, 3.
Yeah.
It's like, okay.
Big difference.
That makes that feel like you're supposed to be in combat.
And
as opposed to before when it was like, well, every Marine on the charge has 2 attacks. What does your chainsword give you? 1 more? But you lost your bolter?
Yeah.
Like, it just didn't feel worth it sacrificing that.
And then there wasn't much difference between unarmed and armed guys. Now they're making it seem like, sure, your guy who only has a gun gets 1 butt with the gun, but that unit's going to lose to a dedicated melee unit.
Right. It just should.
Yeah.
Good. I'm glad.
Yeah.
So, we'll see. We'll see how far they go with it. I mean, like I said, they've definitely shown that they are willing to change things and switch it up.
Yeah.
So many stats that we've seen so far are just not what I was expecting in terms of like hit rolls.
And I have to imagine that as hard as certain stats it is, as hard as it is for players to let go of stats they're so familiar with. Because like forever you saw so many 4s on a Space Marine stat line, and you were used to the guns doing, like Melta Gun was always strength 8, Las Cannon always strength 9, Bolt Gun always. Like now that's not like sacred so much, I think that is better. Not for the sake of change, but just like give these things more specific roles, make them more flexible, and then we've seen them willing to change some of these rules that we've been so used to for a long time, like "and they shall know no fear," for example.
Yeah.
Shadow in the Warp, like Shadow in the Warp in particular is a way different thing now.
Yeah.
But like, I hope that carries on to some more radical things in the core rules of the game. We'll see though.
Yeah. I know. I'm hopeful.
But I'm pumped. And we're like a month-ish out from the box.
We assume. We still. I don't think we've ever gotten an official like number.
No.
But every single time they've done an edition change, it's always been in June. So we're expecting June again. We know that that timeline works out for like previewing all the armies. Still lines us up.
I think at Warhammer Fest they said June.
Or did they?
They didn't give us a date. They just said in June.
Okay. I'm
Yeah.
fine with that.
Yeah. I'm excited by the NIDS side of that. Other new things. We didn't get much else.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the Warcry thing that's been advertised forever is finally almost
we
here.
knew that the last of the Warcry boxes for the Realm of Gur is finally releasing. That's the new Stormcast versus Flesh Eater Courts.
Mm-hmm.
But you were saying it was funny because like the teasers, like we had some rumor engines that had some of the stuff from that box. Oh man, so long ago. Like I want to say it was like 2021.
Yeah, and
Like it was a long time.
And you
ago.
saw a leaked grainy photo, which it surprised me that in this day and age, where even the weakest smartphones have HD cameras, but a weak grainy photo, what seemed like before the last Warcry update came out, of the one that's about to come out.
Right.
And now it's finally here-ish? This weekend? Next weekend?
This weekend, I think it's pre-order.
Okay.
So it was a grainy photo. We knew the name of it because we had a roadmap. We saw teasers of the models, and then it was Warhammer Fest showed it off and gave the contents of it, and then now finally it's pre-order. Yeah. Like, there were plenty of things we had seen for the first time after that had come out before it.
Yeah.
Like the Underworlds box of the Wizard Stormcast versus the Crazy Zinch Warband.
Yep.
Like, we found out about that after the Warcry one, and then it came out before. Like,
Yep.
by a couple weeks, like, it was...
I think Lizards we found out about,
Yeah.
Seraphon we found out after, and they got a huge release before.
Yeah.
And they still have more.
It is... They're treating it very much like the Slaves of Darkness, where the Slan and the new Skink Riders and the new Warriors feel a little out of place because you're... Like, the rest of the army that it goes with isn't out yet, and there's no ETA.
Yep.
Like, we still don't know when...
And you got an army book that's technically not legal because it's not available to everybody.
Exactly. You can't even activate it in the app.
Yeah.
It's not released yet, and so like you can't get it like your rules digitally. You have to use the book. And then if you didn't get one of the starter boxes, you don't get the rule book yet.
You know,
it feels weird.
I get a little torn on it. I mean, I don't play many games, so that doesn't tear me up that much. But I'm a little torn on whether or not I like this system, and they've done it for a while now with Black Templars and Luminous. They did it back then. Like, I love the boxes they release. Mm-hmm. Cool box, feels like a premium product. You get a pretty great deal on the stuff. You get to touch it early-ish. Mm-hmm. Although, I guess it wouldn't be early if everything else just came out. But then there's that. You're left with, like, well, I technically can't roll with this army book in a tournament yet, or in the app. And all the other models I want won't be out until we don't know.
Right.
So, like, I can't tell if I like it or I get frustrated by it.
I kind of wish that they would release new models in these boxes. I wish they were just resculpts. And then didn't include the book. But just release the book later then. Like, as much as I like the limited edition, like, soft cover book that you have to get through this, like, if this is, you know, what we have to deal with, I'd rather just wait. You know, give me the models, sure. And I can use my warriors as warriors and replace my old ones, and here's the new Slan on a new base, and, you know, like, that. Well, that's fine. But, like, don't give me new stuff, then. You know, just wait for the book to come out to give me the new stuff. You know? It was like that with Stormcast, too. When it first came out, it took a long time for them to get the new chamber out. It's like, it's so many of them that it just kind of felt that way. Where it's like, yeah, I have the book, but I don't have any of the models. I can't play it. Even after, like, the book formally releases, I'm still waiting for models to come out for a couple months. Yeah. I don't know.
Yep.
And there's still a lot to go.
Yeah.
With Seraphon. Let's run it down.
Crocs and Roars.
So the Crocs make 2 different versions.
Yep.
We have a new artillery, which is the new what do they call it? I can't remember what they call it.
The dino.
The new salamander
Yep.
equivalent. We have the Astrolith Bearer. We have the Old Blood or Scar Veteran, whatever, on the new Agrodon.
Mm-hmm.
We have the Agrodon unit.
Yep.
We have the Warriors in multi-pose.
Right.
Are they multi-pose? They were kind of multi-pose. No, they were pretty monopose, but I'm okay with it. We have a Skink Star Master, I believe, hasn't been released yet, which is a skink on a palanquin, similar to the Slan model, but smaller. That might be it. Maybe it's not that many. It's enough.
That's like still, 7.
It's still quite a few. So that's not as bad as I thought, but it's still quite a few things that it's like we're still waiting on.
7. A lot of armies won't get 7 kits in a release. Plus,
well, some armies don't even have 7 kits total.
Yeah. Plus the ones that they're getting in the starter box. Like, that's a lot. But yeah, I don't know why they started doing it this way. It must just fit into the way they need to stagger stuff. Mm-hmm. It'd probably feel like too much if they dumped 10 kits on everybody at once. Like, and it might not sell that well doing it that way. Breaking it up, I guess, helps people out. And I don't know. Do we see an army coming up soon that is going to be similar, you think? That have a whole ton of kits? I mean, Tyranids have a boatload of kits coming. But
okay, so I guess it depends on the game you're talking about.
Yeah.
For AOS, no. I mean, we have to wait until fall for Cities of Sigmar, which has... we don't know how many new kits.
Yeah.
2. You know?
Infantry and Cavaliers.
That's it. I'm sure there'll be some kind of a character to go with them.
Yeah.
I'm hoping there's a new, Battle Mage kit to go with them. We've seen CADs of handheld cannons.
Mm-hmm.
So there's going to be a rifleman equivalent, kind of Thunderer unit, right? So I think it's going to be 3 units and a character. I'm hoping 3 units and 2 characters.
I think there might end up infantry that are armored, too. And
well, the ones we've seen are kind of armored. They had breastplates.
But I mean, like, on the arms.
Okay.
Because some of the CADs, I thought, had something closer to the Night Lady from that Silver Tower box or whatever set that was.
Well, that might be the Cavaliers.
Could be a character, too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. A good start for them would be, 7 kits, as long as some of them are dual purpose.
Yeah. So heavy cav, foot infantry, ranged foot infantry, some kind of new artillery piece, a new cannon, or something.
Yeah, something.
Some kind of a leader. There needs to be a new battle mage. They need a new wizard. That old battle mage kit, while cool, is so old. It's a very old.
It makes 5 different schools. It makes 5 different ones,
but you can choose 2.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so there's 2 bodies in there that you can make various versions of the battle mages out of. I also wouldn't mind seeing something like, if you're going devoted of Sigmar, doing flagellants or something.
Some sort of zealot unit.
Equivalent to that. Maybe a generic witch hunter. We saw there's a new episode of Hammer and Bolter following a witch hunter's warband.
I didn't see that one yet because I'm still getting through Interrogator.
Oh, so you sent me to that because you're like, hey, a new Hammer Bolter's up. Yeah. I watched it.
Yeah.
It was cool.
Yeah, so I was behind for a while on Warhammer TV stuff and have now just been getting through. I got through Black Talon, or caught up with it. Love that series so far. And then I had never watched Interrogator. And now I started watching it, and it's the grittiest of their series because it's very 40K noir kind of. I mean, there's some classic tropes they try to give him. He's the guy who's seen stuff, and so now he drinks his pain away. But as an interrogator, he's a lot more skilled than the average human or thug or politician or anybody that he encounters. And it's very, very TVMA. I've liked it so far, but it's actually got a lot of episodes. So I'm slowly getting through that, and then I'll watch that new Hammer and Bolter one.
But it takes place in Hammerhall, so you get to see a little bit more of the realms and what's going on. It felt like the episode felt a little like when we played through the board game, the Hammerhall,
which was actually a lot of fun.
Yeah, the episode felt a little like that, which was funny.
Neat.
So, yeah.
And Hammerhall is a major city, right?
Correct. It might be the biggest city in the realms because it's a city that spans a realm gate between the realm of fire and the realm of life. So it's the twin-tailed city. Because it has 2 halves. One is industry, one is agriculture. And they swap things through this massive
they're their own trade resource.
Right. Yeah, on different sides. Yeah. So it's definitely two different cities because they don't. It's not like one is like a semicircle, and the other half is a semicircle, but on the other realm. It's like they're both just circles around the major gate.
Yeah.
And then they do actually refer to them as two separate cities a lot of the time. Hammerhall, Akshi, Hammerhall, Gyron.
Twin city kind of thing. Yeah.
So they call them different, and there's some prejudices, and there's
sure
racism and stuff between the two.
Yep.
The two realms.
Nicknames for each other.
That.
Yeah, I bet.
So yeah, but it was cool.
We may be biased, but the dives into the Mortal Realms, to me, are just more interesting.
Yeah.
40K is always gritty and interesting and fun, but
I like 40K's equivalent of that is exploring unknown places in the universe that we haven't talked about. Showing things from the perspective of non-Space Marines.
Yeah.
Because Space Marines are a myth. The vast majority of people living in 40K...
Yep. They'll never even see one.
Space Marines don't really exist.
Yep.
It's just a boogeyman.
Yep.
There's so few of them compared to the quadrillions of people.
And most people will never see one, certainly never meet one. And there are even high-ranking officers in the Astra Militarum that almost don't believe it. I'm like, oh, they're not going to come here. Mm-hmm. And it's, you're right, they're supposed to be a myth. We are top-down view, so when we play the game, Space Marines are like the citizens almost. Right. But yeah, you're right. So I like when they do the human stuff because there is way more human stuff. Mm-hmm. And then even when they dig into the not war front stuff, which is what Interrogator is like, this is the other...
Right.
This is like your police and your politicians and your factories and it's the regular people who aren't on the front still doing stuff, and that universe is all they know. Mm-hmm. You can get away with that in a galaxy-sized universe because you can make up anything. Well, the Realms is kind of that way because unlike a lot of classic fantasy settings that are just set on a pseudo-European continent
in Earth,
they instead made it the more of a Asgardian myth, where there's these multiple realms that are connected. Mm-hmm. And so it is like a galaxy. It is like a universe.
Anytime anything happens, it's a very small slice of the realm, too, that it's occurring in. Because they are planet-sized spaces, each one. And then it all depends, too, when in the massive history of the realms it's taking place in.
Yep.
Because you can set your own story at any point. And, Hammerhall is described as this city that has been rebuilt dozens or hundreds of times.
Like Byzantium or Troy or something like that.
And so, when a new one, when the new layer is built, it's on top of the bones of the old city. And so, there's tons of evil shit down underneath the Hammerhall that normal citizens are living up in.
Yeah.
There's, tons of nefarious things happening underneath that city.
There could be...
Because it's just, it's dozens of stories deep of tunnels and old
It's like
city.
a fantasy version of a hive, and you can have beings or monsters or things that are just from thousands of years before that everyone's forgotten about or doesn't even know.
Well, there's also hidden strongholds all over the place. There's the storm vaults, like that one. One of the episodes of Black Talon, they assault a storm vault.
Yep.
That was housing big, powerful beings that were really dangerous.
Yep.
We saw two of them. There was the Ghost and then the Tree Lord.
Yep.
And so things like that. And so there's tons more going on that you don't see that you can add to a story that you were trying to tell yourself that takes place there. You're not as limited as you would be as this story takes place in the old world in Talea. It's you're so limited in what story you can tell because that country the borders are defined and you know who is there, you know who its neighbors are.
It's the size of Rhode Island, and
it's you can walk across it in a day. In reality,
Yeah, and even when something's taking place on a specific realm in an Age of Sigmar story, when the world first came out, the maps were very vague and whatnot. Now that they've fleshed them out, they'll talk about this huge events happening on Gur, where they're trying to get these crashed Seraphim temples, and then when they actually show you, on this huge map on this world-sized continent, it's actually only taking place in this little sliver, and then they have to zoom in on that, and it's this tiny forest in that sliver. It's so there could be so much more going on. This isn't a world-ending event happening.
Well, I think they came up with a map that showed just the total space that the entire Realm Gate Wars took place in, when the Stormcast heroes were trying to retrieve Gul Maraz.
Yep.
And they showed the week's worth of campaign that they did to go get the hammer. They showed exactly how far they traveled, and it was like that too. It was here for scale is the entire world, and here's this this pea-sized part of the map is where the entire thing took place.
Yep.
They were traveling across the realm of Aqshy for weeks, jumping over lava bridges and assaulting citadels and stuff, and then you zoom out, it was this much space that they traveled to get this hammer. It just goes to show you just how massive the world is, and it's anything you want can happen. And if you're trying to come up with your own thing, there's space for it.
And that can seem overwhelming to the viewer who's trying to wrap their mind around a fantasy setting. But I like it because they keep filling in blank spaces more often. And then these names start to become regular on your tongue. Admittedly, even though I wasn't a huge fan of the fantasy setting, some of the old world places stuck with you after so long because you got used to them. Now it's kind of happening here where actually, as weird as it looked when you first saw it, it's oh, now that's that realm. Yeah. Other things I had to get used to that are changing. Tried some new brushes.
Yes.
Finally got to try the Avanti Art brushes. You have one of the plus ones. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you got to bust into it yet.
I tested it, make sure it can hold tip.
Yep.
So that's the first thing you need to know with a new brush is how much liquid it can hold. How does it feel to brush the paint off?
Yep.
How does it hold a point?
Yep.
Those are the important things.
That one felt a little more workhorsey to me, but I did get some delicate work done with it too. I did a lot of the right leg. Everyone's viewing left leg on that Slaves to Dark or the Dark Oath guy. Mm-hmm. I forget his name. Did the sore on the leg and everything, and then I tested out one of the premium Kolinsky Sable ones with the gold ferrule at our last paint session, and that one felt like exactly what I needed it to. So it's a softer feel than a Winsor & Newton or Raphael, not as soft as Artis Opus, because to me the Artis Opus bristles felt very delicate, they give way too easy sometimes, but there is a painting style you can use for that. It's how Richard Gray does it. He loves that. He can do very fine lines with it. But the Winsor & Newton and the Raphael has a little bit of a stiffer snap, fuller belly, holds more of everything, and you can kind of do all your work with it if you want. But those are also extremely expensive, kind of hard to get. Mm-hmm. Now, to be disclaimer, I have not tried out the size 4 of the Artis Opus yet. The big one I picked up at Adepticon. I've only used their smaller ones. The Abtalungs are the ones we've liked that we found, and you can get them through AK Interactive. Those have a very narrow belly, but do lots of fine detail work, and their point is magnificent. Mm-hmm. I think the feel of the bristles is a wonderful in-between. The feel of the bristles on this one for the Avanti Art was very similar to that. It is a narrower belly, so it doesn't hold as much water or paint as the higher-end ones that you might use to also glaze with. But fantastic, because now I've gotten used to that Abtalung feel, and so I like it. The point held at the end of the night. When I cleaned it up, it went back to the nice clean tip. So very happy so far with that. And I was using the size 1. They sent me a set, very nice of them. They like to resolve problems. That's another thing I can say. We held off on our review of the product because the brush we picked up at Adepticon had just it
was a production defect.
It was a production defect is all. Yeah. And when I sent it to him, he actually took it serious. He kept me updated on what he was finding, took it to the manufacturer and showed him, and they said it had something to do with the crimping process or a lead bristle or whatever, guide bristle. The ones they sent me back are all perfect. They're all exactly what I need them to be. So happy to use them. Not a sponsor, but people should go follow them, try out their stuff, buy them out. And
it's nice because that means that we can also get nice brushes stocked locally.
Yeah.
That's one of the biggest things about trying to get nice brushes is a lot of times they get shipped from Europe.
Yep.
Or the distributor is in Europe.
Yep.
Kind of thing.
Yep.
And so there's also been a massive wait time or even just availability issues at certain times of the year. We just can't get them. The idea that we can get them stocked in local stores now because of this.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's brushes that do exactly what we want them to do and are high quality and not an arm and a leg in cost, makes me happy.
Same. Like, and
it's just it was just an adventure, like an ordeal trying to get brushes. 'Cause it's always like, well, you're going to save on shipping. Let's all
we all might as well get our brushes now.
Simultaneously. And so we order like 12 brushes.
Because they're going to ship from Spain or whatever. Yeah.
And so, like, not having to wait, not having to make a big deal out of it is I'm excited for it.
Yeah. And like, you know, the prices on them look, I don't know what they've settled on for retail. I don't know if they're even fully released yet. I know he said they, when he was sending them to me, which I didn't expect, I just thought I was going to get a replacement brush. And he's like, you know what? Here, try them all. Mm-hmm. So that was super nice of him. And, but he did say he, like, oversold a bit, I think, on that same week. He, like, had to ship basically everything he had. So it could be they're already for sale.
Okay.
But yeah, getting them, they're out of Texas near the Scale 75, one of their headquarters. And so getting them shipped from there, yeah, that's super easy for us in the States. And you can kind of make do once you get used to painting miniatures. You can kind of make do with any brush, really.
Yeah.
But it is nice to be able to get nice ones.
Exactly.
Quickly, less expensive for shipping. And like you said, hobby stores can then start carrying them.
Yeah. Because it's like, I mean, when you think about prices of brushes, I mean, the gambit is starting to narrow a bit.
Yeah.
Right? Like, even the cheaper brushes that are made for miniatures are not that cheap anymore.
No.
And the most expensive ones, by, virtue of comparison, don't feel as expensive anymore because of that. So to give some ideas, like, most small layer brushes from either, like Games Workshop with Citadel, or from Army Painter, like that, are sub $10.
Yep.
But not by much. Like, we're $8, $9, $10 in that range. Just a normal
synthetic
workhorse kind of brush.
Yep.
That's a lot more than it used to be. We got our Abtalon size 0s through 2 from AK Interactive for about 14.
Yeah.
In that range. It seems like these ones that we got, I think the idea was that they were going to be sort of in that $14 to $18 range for both their Plus and their Premium.
Yeah.
And then when you get into the Rafts and the Windsor Newtons, you're looking more like $25 to $35 per brush, or more sometimes. But there's the range, right? $10 to $25 covers the vast majority of it.
Yeah.
These brushes fall right in the middle, right there with our favorite brushes that we use all the time.
Yep.
So, like, even in terms of, like, oh, well, how much is this going to cost us for this nice new brush? It's not that much.
No.
So, I've spent way more money on packs of just shitty synthetic craft store brushes.
Yeah.
And gotten way less use out of them than some single brushes have given me.
Yep.
Like, no joke. Like, I've got those, like, 10 packs for $3 or $4, whatever. But I go through, like, when I was using those, I'd go through those, like, every month.
Yeah.
I have to go buy another pack. And it's, like, 6 months, and I'm going through how many brushes? I've got just, like, dozens of brushes that are worn out, just sitting in, like, a pencil holder somewhere.
Yep. Use them for junk. Use them for glue and terrain.
And I think about, like, okay, well, $3 per month times 6, that's $18 for all those brushes. Well, I can buy one for $14 and use it for 6 months.
Yeah.
Granted, it's not the same, variety of sizes.
And you're not doing the same, like, volume of projects.
But I'd much rather have, an investment brush that isn't that big of an investment that I just take care of.
And when you get used to the feel of a brush that you like, it does make a difference. I mean, and knowing that the brush is going to do for you what you want it to do is huge.
Right.
Because a lot of cheap ones and synthetic ones and even hybrid ones, that tip will start to curl on you, and then you now have limited use for it.
What's the curling? It's the tip split. Sometimes they split it into Twin Peaks.
Yep.
Sometimes they will literally start to like straw broom on you.
Yep.
Where they literally just turn into a fan.
Yeah, it looks like that cartoon where a cigar exploded.
Yeah, that kind of thing. Or you start getting brushes or bristles falling out as you're going,
pointing in weird directions. Yep.
Or even just like coming out of the brush and like being left
like shedding hair.
Left on the model.
Yep.
And typically that doesn't happen unless you're doing like dry brushing.
Yeah.
Dry brushing, it happens all the time.
Yep.
You have to expect that. But, like, you shouldn't expect that from your nice brush that only has about 20 bristles anyway. You know? You shouldn't expect 5% of your bristles to fall out every single time you use it. You know, whatever. But yeah, so like all those different issues can happen with even higher-end brushes. The ones we like the most last longer.
Yeah, and I am a junkie for that stuff. Like, I will buy brushes even when I don't need them. I'm sitting on an unused RAF. I'm sitting on an unused Artis Opus. I'm sitting on the Miniature Series Artis Opus that I barely used. I've got now these Avante Art. And then I've got 2 Da Vinci Maestro series, the 10 and the 35, that Big Child Creative sells. For some reason, they just like include them in some of their bundles for miniatures or paints that you buy from them. Those are higher end. Those are on the higher end, like the RAF and Winsor Newton ones. They were made in that same style, come from the same era, and they are kind of hard to get. So that's neat that a supplier randomly is throwing those into things.
There were a couple brushes that you were trying out that just don't work with like the way you paint. That's something you need to experience too. Is the nice bit about mid-range brushes is you can see what you like. Like for me, for example, I like the small belly brushes. I don't like it when a brush holds too much. And so, like, a lot of the higher-end ones that have a nice tip and you can do fine detail with but are thicker aren't my style. I like the narrow brushes. I've learned. But you had bought one where you were like, I should like this brush, but I don't use it. I don't like when I look at my toolbox and I see all the brushes. That's just never the one I'm going for. There was one of them that was like that for you, where you're like, I should like this brush, but I just don't ever use it.
Well, I know the Miniature Series for Artis Opus, and now Miniature Series, Winsor Newton had those. They had their Series 7, which is the one everybody knows, and then they had one that was called Series 7 Miniature. And at first, I used to just think it was a naming gimmick to get people who do miniatures to pay more for brushes. But it's this very short-bristled, sharply tapered tip. So it doesn't have like a belly at all. It's supposed to be. Usually you're going to use that for stippling at a high detail level. Very fine lines, sometimes freehand. It draws more like a pencil. But I didn't enjoy it because it didn't hold any water or paint. You had very little time before the paint on the bristles were going to dry, even when you watered them down. And if you watered it down too far, there's no bristle length. That capillary action sucks it right up into the ferrule. Well, Artis Opus made, in addition to their regular series, they made a miniature series. Now, I won a beautiful set in a wooden box on a thing on Instagram, and I do use them for some things. But there's one that I keep handy all the time in my paint case, and I just never find myself reaching for it for fine detail stuff, because I can use the longer bristle with the narrow belly like the Absalon or like the Avante Art and get the same result for the way I paint. So I don't swear by them. I know like Angel Heraldez does. He uses the miniatures, that short, stubby version, like all the time. But I also find that that point doesn't hold for that long, especially if you're doing like stippling. You're kind of beating up the tips of those things. And bristles will legit wear down like you're cutting hair. Like, even if you don't have bristles fall out and the tip doesn't split, you just wear it down to where they're rounded almost. And I find that those just wear down quicker than some of the longer bristle brushes. Like, I have some rafts that are like 6 years old. They're still in my case to do like base coat work. Because the only thing that left, like the bristles still all line up the way they're supposed to. The only thing that left was just the tip got round because I used the bristles so much that they wore down. Otherwise, it's still a great brush when you take care of it. Like, yeah.
And so that's kind of the point I'm making too. It's like, you can't, because someone else uses a brush and loves a brush doesn't mean it works for you.
Yep.
I mean, I know a lot of folks when they're starting off, which we're having a lot more folks getting into the hobby locally as. I don't know if it's a quarantine rebellion kind of thing, but more people are wanting to do things in person now.
Yeah.
Just in general, because they're tired of being isolated, and so there's a lot more folks coming out and playing in person, doing board games, doing card games, doing now tabletop stuff, and there's a lot of folks trying to get into painting because they've seen tons of videos and stuff of people doing it online, and they want to get into it, that kind of thing. But there's I don't know what I would call it, a fallacy that just because someone uses something, that's what you should use too.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot of experience based, right? Like you have to learn how to use specific things and make it work for you. If you just go into it because like my favorite online painter uses this thing, so I should be able to get results that they do, is kind of is a lie. Like it's a trick, right?
Yep.
Like so people come in all the time and say, "Hey, do you carry this paint line? I know this other person that I watched uses this exact paint. I want these exact colors." And I'm like, "Well, why do you want those exact colors?" "Well, 'cause that's what he uses." "Well, why does he use those?" "I don't know."
I guarantee you that
something to think about.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
That painter got to that, and that painter that they're watching, which it's fine to consume information and try what they're doing.
Yeah.
But to your point, like you can develop like a tunnel vision for your favorite whatever it is in any genre,
Right.
and
that could be paints, brands, that could be brushes, that could be model lines. Like you can enjoy and find value in multiple things and not be like a brand whore. You know what I mean?
Well,
like,
and some people use that to keep purchasing things and the purchase of items makes them feel like they're actually progressing,
right.
and they're not doing what their favorite artist or whatever did to get to that point, which is they tried everything, found out what their style was and whatever, or developed lots of styles, and they can use different brushes and different paints, and because all of us carry 3, 4, 5 brands of paint, and all of us have brushes that are some with black handles, some with white handles, some with blue handles, some with like we buy different brands of the stuff when we know how it feels. And yeah, you do have to develop your feel because you can watch Jose David paint on his tutorials and what kind of brush and what kind of brush strokes he's using, but that might not be how your hand pushes that bristle against that model, and you got to find something that you either have to practice to paint like that, regardless of the tool you have,
or what's his name? Who does the brute forcing?
Sergio Calvo.
Sergio Calvo, like amazing painter, but if you watch his style, it's so different.
Yeah.
It's so different from the way that most people paint.
Yeah.
I mean, the way that Ars Opus, their painter, does his painting.
Yep.
He can get very similar results to glazing and to airbrushing and stuff just using a big fat brush.
Yeah.
You know, it's like making the tools do the effect, and well, some might be quicker, some might be slower. It's all about being able to get the results that you want.
Yep.
And maybe I don't know how to do it with an airbrush, but I know how to do it with a dry brush.
Yeah.
You know, I haven't learned that way yet. Like, I couldn't try to do the fine airbrushing, like highlights and glow effects. Like, I couldn't do that. You know, like I haven't learned it yet.
Right, where some of those guys use an airbrush as their finisher and not as their base coat.
Which is insane.
Yeah.
Like, I would be because the times I've used airbrushes, it's literally just base coat. Because it is so it's so finicky. It sprays so much paint. It's just 100% coverage when I do an airbrush. That it's like if I did that, I'd just basically be priming the thing again.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I wouldn't get layers. I wouldn't get glazes and transparency. Like that's not what happens when I airbrush.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And so, yeah, it's a journey, and you can't just jump right into the middle. You know?
Yep.
Is kind of what I guess my conclusion is. And like I said, I've seen so many examples of people just wanting to jump right in there and get there without putting in the miles at the beginning.
Yep.
You know, you're not test driving things. You're just looking for those results and like not understanding why things aren't working the way you want them.
Yeah, and you're right. And sometimes it benefits you to try something because maybe if you're not getting results you like or you feel like you stagnated, trying a totally different thing you haven't. Maybe that won't be a new style you stick to, but it can really be a palate cleanser.
Yeah.
You can get in a rut and then decide to try that dry brush method like Artis Opus does, or you can try like Sergio Calvo where you don't water any paints down and you just base coat and yet get Golden Demon level results. Like it, using his great big size 4 crusty brush, and he just does it.
He's so good.
Yeah, and then you can do like Jose David, where he moves that brush 100 miles an hour and uses a sharp, narrow bristle, where he does like he's sketching the whole time almost, like with a pencil. Yeah, and it's fun to like try that, probably on a model you don't care about as much, and then learn something from that, and maybe you can go back to what you're doing then, and it refreshes you a bit, or you can incorporate it. Even just the different ways people mix paints on their palette can help you out, which everyone should have a wet palette. Let's be real here. But yeah, so the Avanti Art brushes overall, really like them so far. I'm hoping we can continue to get them and the quality stays high. Dracoya of Dracoya Miniatures turned us on to them, and she does some work with Scale 75. You can check her stuff out too.
There was a giveaway.
Yeah, she does. She's doing announcements for that as well. So Scale 70 or Avanti Art, which partners with Scale 75, when Avanti Art hits 500 followers on Instagram, they're going to do a giveaway of a set of their brushes. So that's pretty awesome. So get in there and subscribe. Costs you nothing. And then you're entered. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. But you know what does cost us something that we also need to try
I'd love to have enter my mouth. Is some food.
There's some food.
What's that mean?
Yeah.
Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed. Check out our new episodes every Friday at Google Podcasts, Spotify, and Audible, or on Podbean. You can also follow myself and Llama on Instagram for more. We are at Hyena Paints Minis and at Llama Paints Minis. Music provided by Kevin MacLeod at Incompetech.com. And as always, we'll catch you next time.